An animation series that I created in my parents' basement got picked up by Tubi. Here's my story on why I decided to create an animation series when I only had like $5. Salam and peace, everyone. My name is Zul Manzi. This is really cool for me to do this because I had this YouTube channel for about 16 years. So since having this YouTube channel, of course, it's like why I haven't been really uploading on here. And as I stated, in the intro of this video, I created an animation series. And the name of that series, as I'm wearing the sweater right now, is titled The Matumbalas. Now, let me break y'all some information about the Matumbalas and how did this even come into fruition. The Matumbalas follows a quirky immigrant family living in a chaotic American town trying to maintain their Tanzanian heritage. The Matumbalas follows 5 members in the main family: parents Hashim and Zainab Matumbala, and their 3 children, Amina, Rajab, and Tofika Matumbala. The series follows the various of intergenerational cultural clashes between the parents and their 3 children. Basically all the characters are mixes of folks from my actual family, extended relatives, and also me growing up in Springfield, Massachusetts, where in the Matumbalas, the name of the town is known as Hopeland, Massachusetts.
Ugh. These stores at Hopeland shops suck.
The reason why it's known as Hopeland in the show, not Springfield, is because there's this show called The Simpsons. You guys may have heard of it, may have not heard of it, but they have a town called Springfield in their show. So obviously it's like, well, I can't use that. So the environment of the Matumbalas is predominantly of Springfield, but also a mix of other towns in Western Mass. One in particular, Longmeadow, which is a town where I went to public school, being the only black student for many of my years in my classes, and even in elementary school, being the only black boy in my whole entire grade, being the only Muslim a lot of times in my whole entire grade, from elementary school to middle school and even high school. So I felt like a walking United Nations.
Jeez, your religion is so strict.
Just because I can't eat pork.
I started this project back in May of 2019. And since that time to this point, my team and I, we produced 2 seasons of the Matumbalas. And we also are streaming on 2 other platforms, Quelly TV being the platform that the Matumbalas first got on back in 2020. And eventually we became their most watched show with the first season, which gave us the opportunity to be their first ever original series in 2022, which gave us the landscape to produce a second season, which landed on Quelly TV between 2023 and 2024. And then a year later, we were licensed also on Afroland TV.
Man, I did it! Yes, I did it! Yeah, we did it! We did it!
So here are my top 5 reasons on why I decided to create an animation series. I'm gonna start from number 5 and then we're gonna build ourselves up to number 1. I gotta level up the anticipation, you know what I'm saying? So that's how we're supposed to get down in these streets. So, reason number 5, stand-up comedy.
Okay, here he is, Zul Manzi.
I, Zul the Negro, is smart enough not to scare white women.
I've always loved doing stand-up comedy. I first started doing stand-up when I was 16 years old, when I was a student at Longmeadow High School, and I did it for our talent show. And I had a joke about Miley Cyrus, and I said I was going to start calling her Miley Virus because you never know what type of STD she might have. Now, this was in 2013, so this was the era when she was, at the VMAs, shaking her, in front of Robin Thicke. Growing up, loving my favorite stand-up comedians that, spoke specifically about their own cultural backgrounds or their families, whether it's like Ray Romano talk about being Italian or Larry David talk about being Jewish. So I was like, okay, I'm not Italian and I'm not Jewish, but hey, I'm Tanzanian and I'm Muslim. So why not be that, huh? Let that be the bag. So once I started going into talking about my upbringing and my community and my family dynamics, comedians then started to tell me, hey, Zul, you know, you never know. If you keep going with this type of material, one day it might become a sitcom.
I think you should talk about like maybe your relatives coming to the States for the first time and their experience of you eating all this chicken. But I feel like you know, there's like a whole story that can be told. You know, I mean that's a sitcom right there. You know, I guess you know ultimately like that's the goal.
So I was like, well, that sounds refreshing. And I was like, you know what? Let me turn my stand-up material into either a pilot or into a short film. And, you know, trying to figure out, you know, how I can make this happen because, you know, I'm in Springfield, Massachusetts, and it was getting really challenging for me to see how I can recruit talent. How am I really going to pull this off? And that eventually led to my fourth reason on why I decided to create an animation series, and that is creative alienation. With creative alienation, being in Springfield, Massachusetts, I was struggling to find my place, which mixes and which creative spaces that I belong to, and it felt like I had to meet this unwritten quota. And this quota was the coolness, how to be more cool, how to dress a certain way, how to talk a certain way, listen to a certain type of music, and etc., etc. And I never really felt like I fit in, you know, in any of these particular predicaments. I was really thankful that at least, you know, within the starting point of the Matumbalas, I was able to at least get my friends to jump on board with me. I told my buddy Chris, you know, literally in my parents' basement, that, hey man, I like to make a cartoon, and he was just like, all right, sure, let me know whatever you need.
Yeah. You see what little young's doing?
And at this point, we were already making different comedy skits together, so it was just like, hey, you know, here's another project, another fun thing that we can do. And then my college friend, Samadi Hernandez, I asked her, hey, you know, would you like to voice Zainab, Matumbala, and Amina? And she said, sure, no problem. So she would just come by and record these voiceovers. So that was reason number 4, creative alienation. Now we're gonna go into reason number 3. My love of animation. I've always loved cartoons as a kid, growing up, and I used to actually go to Blockbuster when it used to be relevant, and I used to go ahead and pick up DVDs of Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. When I went to Tanzania for the first time in 2007, this really was the trip that had a profound effect on me. This is my first time going to Tanzania, right? Especially now going there with my family. So as a kid, you know, my brothers and my cousins and I, we would just watch Boomerang, and we used to watch old cartoon classics such as Top Cat, Wacky Racist. One of my favorite was Dastardly and Muttley. You guys remember Dastardly and Muttley? I can't do it, man. But Muttley would just do that laugh. Thanksgiving Day 2007, I created my first cartoon short, and that was because of my trip in Tanzania, watching a lot of those Boomerang cartoons. And that was the reason why I decided to create my own little cartoons called The Comedy Animals. Yeah, there it is, y'all. Take a look at that. I made this animation short back in July 2008, and I misspelled productions because I was 10 years old, and it was titled The Adventures of Gobble Turkey McChicken, where I also misspelled gobble. My spelling wasn't that great. I made this through Windows Paint and Windows Movie Maker. It wasn't really animation, it was just drawings that I made as slideshows, but this was one of my early attempts. Y'all see the progress? Come on, y'all see the progress. Well, I don't really like to say speak things into existence because it removes God out of the conversation. So really what it was that, you know, this was in Islam, you know, there's a term called qadr, which means destiny. So a lot of our lives is predestined. Everything was predestined before we were born. And so, you know, growing up, I've always wanted to envision myself having my own production company, making my own cartoons, having my own cartoon show. And because I just kept going, you know, it eventually led me to create the Matumbalas and have the Matumbalas to be on Tubi next to all of those cartoons that I watched when I was a kid. Yeah, this was made in 2010. I made this DVD in 2010. And then this DVD I made also in 2010 as well. And then this DVD are collections of cartoons that I made from 2008 to 2011. So I know y'all are saying, oh dang, Zul is unk. And you know what? I'm gonna embrace that. Yeah, man, I'm an unk and I'm gonna embrace that. You feel me? Because I love to grow and get older and get wiser. But please don't age me out. So these DVDs are not for sale. This is only for me. And if I ever go to jail, you can sell these and I may get out on bail. So now, moving on. Reason number 2, 3. What reason are we on right now? Media representation. The type of representation of Africa that I would see in Western mainstream media and in Hollywood, it was very, very rare. You know, before the Black Panther facade, it seemed like the only representation of Africa that I would see on television were these bogus 25-cent commercials. And so when I would look at these commercials, it made me feel like, man, you know, I ain't trying to go to Tanzania, man. It's going to just be a bunch of starving kids. It's just going to be a bunch of flies, and it's just going to be a whole bunch of, you know, negativity that I don't want. And I definitely don't want to be around. And I was scared because also the movies that was coming out at that time, you know, you had films such as Hotel Rwanda, which is, you know, it's important to have these type of movies, or The Last King of Scotland, and these different films, although it showcased the realities of our, you know, African nations. But the fact that it seemed like that was the only thing that was being showcased. And another film to throw in there, Blood Diamond. I forgot the brother's name, but he looks like Keenan Ivory Wayans. He's always like in those movies to me. Blood Diamond, Amistad. I know, solid brother, by the way. Just forgot his name, but he looks like Keenan Ivory Wayans. I'm gonna look it up later. But basically, what's his name, y'all? So when we finally went to Tanzania for the first time, the first thing that came in my mind was like, wow, none of those kids look like that in those commercials. The media played a huge role of my deception of Tanzania and how I viewed my homeland. And eventually, once I went over there, it debunked, you know, all the myths and all the false propaganda, or the one-way street that Hollywood kept producing. And I also didn't want to create a series that just said Africa, you know, in a generalization. You know, there's 54 countries in the continent, and it's like, I want to be very specific about which country this is. And my family being from Tanzania, or Tanzania, however you want to pronounce it, I wanted to showcase that. I wanted to let people know that, no, this is a Tanzanian family and they're speaking Swahili. Because, you know, growing up, it was like a random African character would show up on a random television show, and the cliche joke was them speaking in clicks, like, you know, stuff like that. And that used to be the generalization that they used to do. But growing up as a Muslim, it was very, very rare to see any Muslim family on television, you know, and especially just in a normal everyday life. And in Western media, the way how they speak about Muslims and Islam in general. And so terrorism, you know, was something that was just thrown into anybody who had an Arabic name, who practices Islam. A lot of us kind of felt like we didn't know who we were. Because growing up, we'll watch our favorite animation shows and other sitcoms and even films that were about Christmas or were about Hanukkah. And for some of us who are Muslim, we would, in ways, be more excited about Christmas because our favorite cartoon has a Christmas special. And so that became a really big intention for me. And that's one thing that I remind myself, and just to, you know, throw out there for those of you who are sorting out to start your own projects, always start with an intention. What is your intention? It can't be because you want more followers and you want more pics, you know, you want more influencer brand deals. All of that is going to cease. None of that is going to matter, you know, at a certain particular time in your life. What matters is your intention on whether or not are you trying to provide an impact back to your community. And so that's something that I constantly have to remind myself and constantly work towards, and how I can get better and continuously to get better at that. And so that was the second reason, media representation, on why I decided to create the Matumbalas and why I decided to go into animation. So I know y'all really anticipated for this big moment right here. The number one reason on why I decided to create an animation series. As I mentioned earlier in the video about creative alienation, I definitely was feeling like cultural alienation. A big component as far as the culture dynamics was looking into how conformality plays a huge role, and it's prevalent and relevant to any culture. If you don't meet the cultural quotas, where if you're not married by a certain age, or if you are not practicing a certain career that was in the taste buds that were conducive to a certain generation, then it seemed like you were blacklisted or shunned away from the communities or from the family dynamics. I felt like growing up in my Tanzanian community in the US and even in Western Massachusetts, where the youth, our sense of imagination, opinions, our thoughts wasn't taken as serious. Our voice was never heard, and our voice at times was never taken into any consideration. And that used to bother me even as a kid. One of the main mechanisms in the Matumbalas is Amina, Rajab, and Zafika, the three children of the show. Amina being 16, Rajab being 14, two of them teenagers, and Zafika being 11, how they're able to voice their opinions and provide their thoughts, and also to have honest conversations with their parents, Hashim and Zainat. A lot of the work in the Matumbalas I do is going to schools. I visit so many different public schools and private schools and colleges, universities, and partner with nonprofit organizations, conducting screenings and media literacy workshops that center around the themes in the show, in the episodes, and the characters. It kind of looks like a teacher that we had in middle school. I just don't know if she's still alive.
Don't do that.
So that is the number one key reason on why I decided to create the Matumbalas and to use animation to do that.
It's halal.
So there you have it. Those are my 5 key reasons on why I decided to create an animation series and eventually to make the Matumbalas. And I'm just really thankful and blessed to do this work and to do the Matumbalas. And of course, there's so much more into the journey of the themes of the show, but also just the journey of making the show. I'm always appreciative of the support. I'm always appreciative of my team. I'm always appreciative of those who have supported the Matumbalas and have supported all of us of the Matumbalas team, and continuously to encourage us to do more, continuously to encourage us to create, and continuously to encourage us to provide an impact for our communities. To check out the Matumbalas on Tubi, go to my description. I got the link right there for y'all to hit to go on there on Tubi to see 2 seasons. Binge watch those seasons, man. And on this YouTube channel, now I got to do the spiel. Y'all can hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button, hit that bell, hit that like button, and also comment and watch the full video to increase my audience retention. Yeah, guys. I pray that I will never ever become these quintessential influencers, but hit that subscribe button though. Anyways, salam, peace, and have a good blessed day.